Dolphins fans, it's Dustin Davis, and there's a big name tight end being linked to Miami, and it might be more complicated than the headline makes it seem. The Miami Dolphins closed their season at 7-10, and the franchise now confronts decisions that will define its trajectory for years. Front office changes have arrived, coaching staff has been reshuffled, and the roster that once carried playoff aspirations appears increasingly dated. Internal friction has become visible. Late-season demotions, contract complications, and uncertain futures for veteran contributors have created an atmosphere of instability. Cap constraints, draft positioning, and philosophical disagreements about how to construct a contender all factor into what comes next. Miami's direction remains unresolved, and the coming months will reveal whether the new regime can navigate these competing pressures without compounding past mistakes. Let's check out all the developments happening in Miami. Big can reshape everything. First of all, let me take a moment to ask for your help. If you enjoy our videos, give us a like. It's a great way to keep the content going. Thanks for the support. Denver occupies an unusual offseason, balancing immediate roster gaps with newfound financial flexibility. Wide receiver sits high on the club's priority list, alongside running back and tight end. And the organization now has the resources to pursue proven talent rather than relying solely on the draft. Jaylen Waddle emerges as a logical candidate, given his age, skill set, and contract structure. Bill Barnwell has suggested Waddle might be underrated due to inconsistent quarterback play in Miami and the presence of Tyreek Hill overshadowing his contributions. An alternate view holds that Waddle's numbers were inflated by Mike McDaniel's scheme and may not replicate in a different system. The truth likely sits between these extremes. Waddle's team-friendly contract and Miami's limited depth at receiver suggest the Dolphins could demand a first-round pick, an expensive but defensible price. Barnwell also highlighted that Waddle is owed $68.6 million over the next 3 seasons, approximately $22.9 million annually, a reasonable figure for a legitimate top receiving option. Though frequently overshadowed by Tyreek Hill, Waddle's 5-year career totals merit attention: 373 receptions, 5,039 yards, 26 touchdowns. He began his career with 3 straight 1,000-yard campaigns. Inconsistent quarterback play limited him to 1,654 yards over the past 2 seasons. Yet his 2022 performance, 75 catches, 1,356 yards, 8 touchdowns, demonstrates his peak capability. Waddle carries a career passer rating of 96.9 when targeted, reflecting his efficiency as a pass catcher. Denver possesses the infrastructure within its receiver room to form one of the league's better units. The missing element is an authentic top option, a gap that should be addressed this offseason. Denver's 30th overall pick in the first round should represent sufficient compensation to acquire Jaylen Waddle from Miami. I'll be honest, as a Dolphins fan, trading Waddle would sting. Even with Tyreek drawing coverage, he's been reliable when healthy. If Miami even listens, the return better be massive, because replacing that speed and chemistry isn't easy. While trade rumors swirl, Miami's draft strategy is taking shape with the franchise's highest pick in years on the horizon. As the draft approaches, Miami will seek a prospect capable of anchoring the roster for years. Mock drafts project Caleb Downs to Miami. As attention shifts toward free agency and the 2026 NFL Draft, Miami holds the number 11 overall selection, the franchise's highest pick since selecting Jaylen Waddle at number 6 in 2021. NFL Network analyst Daniel Jeremiah's latest mock projects Ohio State safety Caleb Downs landing with the Dolphins. Jeremiah wrote, "Downs has the versatility to play multiple spots, much like his teammate in this scenario, Minkah Fitzpatrick. Downs' football intelligence and leadership are off the charts. Miami has to improve a defense that ranked 24th in scoring and 32nd in opponent completion percentage." Bleacher Report's Daniel Harms previously labeled Downs the single best prospect for the 2026 draft cycle, noting that his experience in Matt Patricia's defense should facilitate an immediate NFL impact. Jeremiah drew comparisons between Downs and Minkah Fitzpatrick, though it remains unlikely they would play together. Miami Herald's Omar Kelly has suggested Fitzpatrick himself could be traded this offseason. An argument exists against selecting a safety if positional value drives draft decisions. However, passing on a prospect widely regarded as the top player in the class may prove too costly regardless of position. Additionally, Downs would address a real need. Miami's secondary appears thin, particularly if Fitzpatrick departs and several defensive backs reach free agency. I remember when Miami took Waddle at 6 and ignored the noise. This feels similar. Sometimes the best move is betting on a rare prospect and letting the rest of the roster adjust around him. Beyond the draft board, the Dolphins face a financial puzzle that could dictate their entire offseason approach. Tua Tagovailoa's future with Miami has evolved into one of the club's most significant offseason storylines. Following a late-season demotion and the organization's decision to evaluate Quinn Ewers, the franchise's next steps under new leadership will determine whether Tua remains in the long-term plan. With a freshly installed general manager and head coach, many league insiders view Tua's exit as probable. CBS Sports' Joel Corey argued in his agent's take that the separation is inevitable, merely a question of timing. It's not a matter of if, but when the Dolphins part ways with Tagovailoa, Corey wrote. After being demoted to third-string quarterback by former Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel after 14 games, Tua's ready for a change of scenery. The new regime of general manager Jon-Eric Sullivan and head coach Jeff Hafley will probably go in a different direction at quarterback next season. The central offseason question for Miami remains straightforward. Do they retain Tua? The financial calculus makes answering that question extraordinarily difficult. The dead cap consequences of cutting or trading him are massive. According to Over the Cap, a pre-June 1 release would burden Miami with approximately $99 million in dead money while generating about $42 million in cap relief. A post-June 1 cut reduces immediate dead money to roughly $67 million, but produces only about $11 million in cap savings. Corey further observes that Tua carries $54 million in guarantees for 2026, a figure that will discourage most potential trade partners. Few organizations are positioned to absorb that guarantee, which narrows Miami's realistic options considerably. The outcome is an organization that appears constrained. The front office may prefer moving on from Tagovailoa, yet the structure of his contract could compel Miami to keep him on the roster at least through the upcoming season. As a fan, this is frustrating. It sounds like the team's ready to move on, but the money says otherwise. If you're stuck either way, keeping Tua one more year might be survival, not commitment. Meanwhile, an ESPN analyst has connected the Dolphins to a surprising quarterback trade that could reshape the position room. ESPN analyst Benjamin Solak projects Philadelphia will send backup Tanner McKee to Miami in exchange for a middle-round draft pick. The suggestion carries merit on paper, but whether McKee truly addresses Miami's quarterback needs remains debatable. Selected in the 6th round of the 2023 draft, McKee has seen limited action in Philadelphia, 6 games and 2 starts, both of which came late in the 2024 and 2025 regular seasons when the Eagles' playoff position was secure. In a recent relief appearance versus Washington, McKee completed 52.5% of 40 attempts, throwing 1 touchdown and 1 interception. He was more efficient in the 2024 finale, completing 27 of 41 for 269 yards and 2 touchdowns. Endowed at Stanford, McKee finished his collegiate career completing 63.2% of passes, 5,336 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions. The touchdown-to-interception ratio warrants scrutiny, though his limited NFL sample shows just 1 pick and a tendency to protect the football. Solak's summary: the quarterback factory spits out another trade, as the Eagles will deal QB2 Tanner McKee to the Dolphins in exchange for a middle-round pick. Middle round remains vague. It can't indicate anything from round 2 to round 6. Miami is unlikely to surrender a second-round pick for a developmental quarterback like McKee. The Dolphins hold 3 third-round selections in 2026, including Philadelphia's from the Jalen Phillips trade. So moving a third could be considered, but would still represent significant costs for a player with minimal game tape. Miami also possesses selections in round 4, 5, and 7. From a value perspective, anything above a 5th-round pick would constitute overpayment. Sullivan will need to balance quarterback upgrades against the constraints imposed by Tua Tagovailoa's contract. Trading for McKee could make sense if the price remains modest. A 6th-round pedigree and sparse playing time behind Jalen Hurts limit his upside, but he offers a developmental option who can push positional competition. The Dolphins may prefer drafting a quarterback with longer-term upside, yet McKee would be an acceptable low-cost fallback if acquired for the right pick. I don't hate McKee, but I'm not paying real draft capital for mystery tape. If this costs more than a late pick, I'd rather roll the dice in the draft and keep the assets. So, what about you, fan? To negotiate or not? Leave your answer in the comments. In another development, Miami's recent coaching change may have opened the door to a scheme fit quarterback already on the market. One of the significant offseason questions for the San Francisco 49ers centers on what to do with backup quarterback Mac Jones. Multiple teams will express interest, and Miami now appears among them after promoting Bobby Slowik to offensive coordinator. Slowik's coaching background includes a stint with the 49ers as an assistant from 2017 to 2022 before he joined DeMeco Ryans in Houston as offensive coordinator. Following his dismissal in Houston, Slowik arrived in Miami on Mike McDaniel's staff and has since been elevated after McDaniel's departure. Slowik's familiarity with Kyle Shanahan's offensive principles suggests he will install a similar scheme in Miami. That system favors a quarterback who processes quickly, executes timing throws, and thrives within a structured, play-action heavy attack. Traits Mac Jones has demonstrated. With the 49ers this season, Jones compiled 2,151 passing yards, completing 69.6% of his throws while throwing 13 touchdowns against 6 interceptions across his starts. He posted a 5.3 mark in games he started, demonstrating steadiness and ball security that would appeal to a team seeking a reliable starter or bridge option. Miami's decision to move on from Tua Tagovailoa is becoming increasingly apparent. He was benched late in the regular season in favor of Quinn Ewers. That shift opens the door to exploring alternatives via trade or draft. Would Miami expend a first-round pick on a quarterback or target a move with lesser capital? Perhaps a second or third rounder to acquire an experienced, scheme-ready passer like Jones. If the 49ers find an offer they cannot refuse, Miami represents a logical landing spot for Jones. We've seen this arc before. Quarterbacks leaving Shanahan systems and landing as transitional starters elsewhere. Some stabilize franchises, others fade quickly. Jones's numbers show control, but history says the margin for error is thin. What do you think? At the same time, reports have emerged linking the Dolphins to one of free agency's most dynamic offensive weapons at tight end. The staff will evaluate free agency, trade possibilities, and the draft to secure reliable targets and depth at receiver and tight end. Bleacher Report's Alex K released a positional free agent projection that identifies the Dolphins as a plausible landing spot for all-pro tight end Kyle Pitts. After a career with ups and downs, Pitts finished the 2025 season strongly, totaling 928 receiving yards on a career-high 88 receptions and earning second-team All-Pro honors. K made the case that Pitts would address a glaring need. After shipping off Jonnu Smith before the 2025 season kicked off, the Dolphins failed to generate reliable pass-catching production from their tight end spot. Neither Greg Dulcich nor Darren Waller stood out while splitting time as Miami's primary receiving TE, and the team now desperately needs to fill that hole this offseason. While there are plenty of other question marks for the new Miami regime, led by head coach Jeff Hafley, to sort out, getting a potential game-changer like Pitts in the lineup could pay dividends. Regardless of whether Tua Tagovailoa, Quinn Ewers, or someone else ends up starting under center for Miami in 2026, Pitts should emerge as a favored target thanks to his excellent playmaking skills and ability to create mismatches all over the field. Both Dulcich and Waller will reach free agency. The duo did not perfectly replace Jonnu Smith's production, yet they offered encouraging flashes. Dulcich averaged 44.4 receiving yards over Miami's final 5 games, a pace that projects to roughly 750 yards over 17 contests. Waller battled injuries but remained productive when available, finishing the season with 6 touchdowns, tied for the team lead, and now weighing whether to retire or return. Landing Pitts would instantly add an elite mismatch and a tested playmaker in his prime. Still, Miami's salary cap picture and competing roster priorities make pursuing a bona fide All-Pro an expensive undertaking, and on the surface, a somewhat unlikely scenario. New general manager Jon-Eric Sullivan has publicly favored using free agency to complement the roster, while relying primarily on a draft and develop model. Bringing in a player of Pitt's caliber might represent an exception to that philosophy, a strategic deviation justified only if the price and cap architecture align. Any such signing would create trade-offs elsewhere on the roster and require the front office to reconcile short-term improvement with long-term build principles. Sullivan will have to balance competing pressures, deliver visible upgrades to help the 2026 roster compete while preserving salary flexibility and draft capital. Miami could explore signing Pitts if term and cost allow,
pursue a trade for an established pass catcher, or opt to draft a tight end with upside and develop him within Hafley's system. I won't lie, watching Pitts and Aqua would be fun, but fun gets expensive fast. If this move costs depth elsewhere, I'd rather see Miami build smart instead of chasing a headline signing. Now, I want to know from you, would you hire Kyle Pitts? I want to see the best ideas in the comments. Don't forget to leave and subscribe. Join our community and get exclusive content every day. We always bring you everything happening in Miami. See you soon.